at Penn and Teller. Big guy does magic, smaller guy next to me, he does magic too. He doesn't talk that much. Anyway, I wanted to welcome you to In Time. Welcome you all to In Time with Nick. Love you all. Peace. Go get him, Nick.
Hello. Welcome everyone to Downtime. I'm still getting used to kind of the new name, but I'm getting there. I haven't made the mistake yet. I'm sure I will. And with us tonight is Jena. Jena, how are you?
I'm doing all right tonight. Thank you for having me. First time.
I know.
I like this. It feels so official and fancy here. I like this space. It's different.
Yeah. Well, and you got the thumbnail up there, right over your shoulder there, and you saw that thumbnail. I was like, oh yeah, I know, right? Well,
there's my face.
We want our guests to feel important. So thank you so much. And we've got $2 the Sinister Porpoise super chat already. Thank you so much, Sinister. I feel the need to repeat all my recursion jokes. Well, you can if you'd like to. I never tire of them. I will say this though: if the recursion joke is told correctly, you only actually need to initiate it once, and it'll just keep going for a very long fucking time. Anyways,
that's it.
Yep, that's it. So thank you all for joining us, and I'm gonna. So this is usually just like a much more the more informal chat of our shows, but I do want to start with a little bit of a preamble just to talk about this, sort of frame this a little bit. So. Winston Churchill, somebody most Americans don't give a fuck. And the reason they don't give a fuck about him is because he's not an American. And it's unfortunate because there are human beings that are so remarkable that they really belong to everybody. Neil Armstrong is somebody that all human beings can be proud of. Alexei Leonov, he's a Russian, sure. But, somebody that, all human beings should study and be proud of, Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. and Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill was the Prime Minister of Britain through World War II and did an absolutely amazing job. He essentially is a large part of what saved the world from Hitler. One of the most remarkable human beings ever to have lived. And then when he was bored with saving the world, he decided to write books on the topic that were so good that he won the Nobel Prize in Literature, which is something that also most people don't understand about the guy. But one of the things that also he did was he suffered from severe depression. He wrote about that and called it the Black Dog, one of the most successful human beings really ever to have lived. He called it the Black Dogs, talked about the Black Dog was always with him. It followed him around everywhere he went. And even when it wasn't growling or menacing, he knew it was with him. This imagery was so powerful that it created, it was the name for the #1 institute for the research of depression. Is called the Black Dog Institute in Australia. And, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson has come out and talked about suffering depression. And it's one of those things that can affect anybody. It really doesn't matter how successful you are. It doesn't matter how good your life is or isn't going, according to whatever metric people use. It can affect and does affect everybody. The other thing is mental health. We seem to have this idea that people are naturally healthy. Nobody's naturally physically healthy. All of us have quirks in our body. All of us are different in different ways. Yeah, so somehow we expect that the brain is everybody's brain is operating at whatever normal. No. So I'm looking forward to discussing all of these topics, but one of the reasons why I think these discussions are so important is because if you take a look at how homosexuality has been normalized in this country, relatively speaking. It's been through people who were in positions of influence outing themselves, coming out of the closet and saying, I'm gay, and, look, I'm just like you, and here I am, and making it normal, because we were realizing that, it's just a normal part of the human condition. And so only people who, exactly. So only people who talk about mental health and talk about either the issues that they struggle with, and people who otherwise you look at and you sit there and say, but they're so normal. And it's like, yeah, that's the point. So
you never know. Yeah.
So that's it. So that's why I think that this is a topic that's worth discussing. And it's not an easy topic for any number of reasons, not the least of which is there is a lot of stigma attached to it. But I really wanted to say thank you very much for coming on tonight to discuss this with me. And we'll just sort of see where the conversation goes. But it's one of those that I think the more times people can talk about it, the better. So thank you for coming.
Absolutely. Oh, hell yeah. I'm glad to be here. I'm excited. I've been excited since you asked me, and I, made my little cheap shot to say, oh, Nick, I'm just going to have to find an excuse one day to come onto your show. I don't know how, but, I'll figure it out.
Well,
not but a week or two later, I get an invite.
Yeah, I was just like, and it's just one of those things. Well, I was so you are the co-owner of the Atheist Network Group. It is a YouTube channel, Tang. We have had Oz, who is the other owner, and a number of people from Tang on. Mm-hmm. And you guys had a conference in Fort Wayne, Texas, which you're looking to redo again, because
Texas.
I guess you're... Why do I keep doing that? I keep doing that. I don't know why I do that. You'd think I know
now
what I
Oz
was
is
there.
Gonna slap you the next time he sees you.
I know. I know he is. Oh dear Lord! I don't think he's in the live
edit
chat.
That out.
So maybe
this is not live.
Yeah.
This is not live. This edit it out.
That's just YouTube. You just cut it. Boom, done. So they have that new editing tool now. This is good. So as I was saying, Fort Wayne, Indiana, that's what I said. That's what I've always said. Mm-hmm. And there's going to be no actual evidence to the contrary. So you guys, and I was fucking there, and I can't get it right. You'd think I'd remember the difference between Texas and Fort Wayne, but okay. We're good. We got things under control, sort of. Just in time, under control is not our motto, but all right. So Fort Wayne, Indiana, pro tip, don't try to get a cab, Uber, or anything out of the airport at 1 a.m. in the morning. They don't know. No. But I was there. And you guys had talked. Actually, there was a number of conversations about mental health. So it was just one of those things and Oz talks about mental health, about his struggles with mental health on the show. It's something that you've been passionate about and talked about. So, now I'm just curious, so why is it important to you?
Well, and for me personally, it's been a progression over the last several years, and maybe as early as my early 20s, how important mental health has been for me, because it was a journey, a growth, a learning experience for me to, move my mindset away from the stigma, the general usual stigma that, any religious family or community has on mental health, and graduating to understanding more that this is something that should be more talked about. It should not be stigmatized. It should not be made to assume a person is crazy or a psycho or just someone that has demons in them or is, full of the devil or anything like that. It's nothing of that sort. So for me, and especially stemming from my biological father's passing back in 2010, that was hard hitting. Obviously, I grieved completely different from how my family grieved. a prime example would be that, my mother and my sister would express that they saw loving, heavenly dreams of my father, multiple nights after his passing, where I spoke a little about this before once, or a few times, I would say, for at least a solid 1 to 2 months, woke up screaming because I would have terrifying nightmares of my dad either choking me, trying to kill me, or whatever, just something horrible, obviously, that you would not imagine a father would do to you. Now, granted, I didn't have an ugly relationship with my dad. I didn't have any ill will before he died. The last memory I saw or recall of my father was him waving me goodbye as I got on the bus to start my 3rd semester of college. That was 3 weeks prior. And 3 weeks later, he passes suddenly. So my dad and I bonded. I was daddy's girl, classically. We bonded, just silently. We never really talked a whole lot personally, but it was just that mutual bond between, youngest daughter and dad. Whatever my dad loved, I did. Football, ice cream, Pepsi, cookies, all that. So, with that being lost, I found myself, with the terror and the nightmares, just dealing with that struggle, dealing with that grief. And at that same time, that also posed as a catalyst of me questioning my faith then. I was, raised Baptist Christian. So all of that at once was a lot to deal with, obviously. And, growing up, you're taught, at least myself and my sister, I have an older sister, she's 3 years older. We both raised the same, even dressed the same for a number of years. So we were taught and instilled that, you cannot get past a struggle or any type of grief without the Lord. And you must pray to God to get you through that grieving and get you through that journey. And so, with me questioning, it almost felt like, is this a punishment for me to question because of these nightmares? And then, I was fearful to explain that to my mother at the time. And when I did, she had this not kind look on her face, as if I was genuinely crazy. And that scared me even more, to the point where she forced me into therapy. Now, up until that point, I believe I was barely turned 20. It was way before. I'm a nurse in real life, by the way, if none of you really know. This was way before I started nursing school. I had any kind of medical education whatsoever. I was still an undergrad. So my understanding of anything medicine, mental health, it was basic, basically. And so with me knowing and being instilled with the idea that, you cannot survive without God. You must pray. And if that's not working, then something's really wrong with you. Like, you're filled with something. And especially if you're filled with these dreams. So I was forced into therapy, and that was horrifying. And I cried all through that first session, even though the first session, you're just getting to know them. They're getting to know you. They're asking the general basic questions, things like that. It was nothing really that in depth, but I was just tearful the whole way through. An hour sitting on that couch with this stranger asking me things, personal things, and things I wasn't ready to talk about, especially to whoever they were. And, I went once and never went again because I didn't like it. I wasn't ready. Obviously, I really was not ready. And I was scared because I felt me being forced in this situation meant I was really crazy. It meant, through my family and myself, I was filled with a demon, or I was filled with something horrible that was causing me to have these dreams and ideas. And, that ushered and created this depression. So, that's pretty much the start.
Gee, well, and holy shit. Now, first of all, let's be fair. It wasn't an hour. It was 50 minutes.
Right. Thank you. Totally right about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Just the fact that that's funny is the ubiquity of that experience. Like, it's been 50 minutes.
Right.
Yeah, that's an hour. Okay. Yeah. Oh dear Lord. So well, and I can't imagine, sort of being told there's something wrong with you in addition to having lost your father, and then having to go through the process of being told
deconstruction and all that. Yeah.
Oh dear Lord. So I gotta ask. I don't know. Every time I bring this up, I think of S.J. Thomason, because I'd done a debate with her, and she had. Did you? I don't know if you saw the debate. It was a while ago. So
I heard of it in great detail from you in a Discord conversation, and you were utterly brutal.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was. Yeah. She quit debating for about a year after that. But one of the articles that she had brought up, and I studied that particular article, and had already highlighted like all her comments like before the thing, because I knew what she was going to say. But one of them talked about depression in people who deconvert, and found that there is in fact a correlation that the people who've deconverted tend to suffer higher depression. I think there's a number of reasons for that, and I'd like to get your opinion on that. But the study acknowledged, and has later been confirmed, that they only studied this in countries where religion was the norm. And so when you're deconverting into a minority group. You're going from the majority opinion, which is that there is a God, to a minority opinion. And they said one question that, this study does not answer, but we think should be answered is, do we see the same depression in atheists or nuns in countries that are mostly secular? And the answer is no, you do not. In fact, you see the inverse, which is when somebody ends up being religious in like the Scandinavian countries and so on and so forth, they actually suffer greater depression. So yeah. So I think it's important to, when we're talking about atheists tend to suffer greater depression, to admit that yes, that is true, but it's not as much a consequence of their atheism, although there's, I think, a lot to unpack there. So you're dealing with your dad's death. I have to believe that as you're starting to question your religion, I mean, it must be nicer to feel like, okay, he's in heaven and you're going to see him again someday. So this has to be a lot to go through and making it harder, I would imagine.
Yes, absolutely. So I think that's what, and especially since through my deconstruction journey was over several years by myself. And when I say by myself, I mean legitimately by myself. I did not discuss any of what I was questioning or thinking with my family, friends, coworkers, anything, any of the sort. Mm-hmm. And I was far removed from any kind of online, well, I mean, other than like role-playing games online and, other stuff like you do with when you communicate with people, but not like anything like Discord or YouTube or any way, shape, or form, like finding a atheist community like now. So, it was just me in my room, looking through Netflix documentaries and, finding clips of 𝗏𝗏𝗏 all over the YouTube, and staying up till like 5 a.m. watching those. And just over the years, like pretty much jumping in and out, basically, feeling that, yeah, no, I don't believe this, but maybe it's this. And, but I still held on to a lot of, trusting that I would see my dad again, that I still clung on to. And also, it's quite the journey going through this as a Black woman, because there is a uniqueness from being a Black atheist, because you're not just removing yourself from a belief system. You do impact yourself being removed from the overall society or culture or community. I know that's, in a sense, you do lose that community in any other race. Of course, I recognize that, but there is a very strong tie of being Black in America with being religious, mainly Christian. It's no short of going to any particular heavily populated African American place. Before they even ask your first name, it's what church you go to. It's just instantaneous. It's natural, unfortunately. And so not knowing or understanding that risk or what that meant, especially since a lot of my faith then was wrapped in my identity as a person, like this is how I should be and live my life and appear and dress and all that, whom I marry and all that good stuff. And so how do you process that? And it takes so long. And I was too scared to approach anyone with my thoughts or my questions. So I legitimately over 6-7 years, it was just me just alone going through those motions, going through those things in my head, figuring out what that meant. And if there were people like myself, because I didn't understand or knew if they were. And, I was, raised to think, oh, that's the, not to sound belligerent, but quote, that's, the white man's problem or whatever. Like that if you're Black, of course you believe. That's just natural. That's how slaves were freed. And, interestingly enough, that's the excuse. And that's how we got through the civil rights movement. Now, granted, I hold there was some sanctuary with religious organizations feeding, clothing, housing those throughout that process in history, sure. But that does not mean that was a thriving situation. It was a survival situation. And now that, a lot of that history is far removed, even though, of course, there's still racism still exists. I don't feel holding on to a belief would carry or help a person thrive. And, I was very inept with history and especially astronomy. I really liked, the cosmos and watching all the sci-fi shows and documentaries and things like that. I was never a young Earth creationist believer person. I just melt that together to believe God created it, but yeah, the universe is this million billion years old. Like I still trusted that. So all that to say,
old Earth creationist, essentially.
Yes, thank you. All that to say, it was rough. And when it came to the nail in the coffin, so to speak, or nail in the hand, whatever, or the foot. Gotcha. When it came to that point where I sat down with myself and was fully just, I'm an atheist, that moment hit in me finally where I had to re-grieve from my dad. It was then, after several years after his passing, that I knew I would never see him again. And that broke me for a while again. And I say within months later, I found myself in a Discord community full of atheists, and here I am.
Well, I am going to interrupt. I've been trying to avoid this. So we got to take a step back, but it's a super chat. I'm basically contractually obligated to read these. I just
understand.
Sinister Porpoise, $2. Sinister Porpoise, $2. Fort Wayne, Indiana. It's not as good as Terre Haute. I swear to God, I'm not gonna go to Tang next year because I know Oz is gonna call me up into the state. Nick, what state are you in? Just asking, Nick. Mm-hmm. Last time we tried to auction off my suit, this time he's gonna be like, I don't know. No, I'm not going near it this
Nick,
this
this
year.
This is not fucking Texas, Nick.
Do you at least have the continent correct, Nick? Do you know roughly what where on the planet you're on? Yeah. I don't know. This is. I'm going to stay away from the whole situation. Thank you, Sinister, for your continued support. I'm not as appreciative of the content as I could have been. It's like I don't know what. I don't know. Why is it got to be like make fun of Nick show here? It's like, it's just Jenna supports me.
I just want you in the least trouble possible.
Well, that's a full-time job, keeping me in the least trouble. That is a genuine. We have a whole team on that, and they're working around the clock, and they still can't really keep a lid on it. But we're trying. So George W. Bush was oh dear Lord, he liked to party. So he famously cocaine, all these other things, but his biggie was alcohol. And alcohol is an interesting one. There's a lot of, I've had my fair share of issues with alcohol, and with anything with mental illness, we always kind of want like this, we want simple answers, right? And there aren't usually any when it comes to mental illness. But George W. Bush seemed to be, from the outside, a textbook example of sort of this addictive personality. And when he decided to sober up, that's when he found religion. And I don't think it was because he wasn't particularly religious beforehand, but all of a sudden then he basically became evangelical after he gave up alcohol. And it seems to me that he sort of replaced, and this is the concept of a dry drunk. This is what a dry drunk is, which is they're still a drunk, really. They still have that kind of the need to engage passionately and recklessly in something, but it's no longer alcohol. So what's it going to be? And for him, it was religion, and it filled this hole that the alcohol had. But it was still a hole, and there was still something missing. He just filled it. So it's like patching up So I think religion's different for everybody. So I don't want to sit there and just say that for everybody it's X, Y, or Z. But it does seem to me like religion can do that, right? That it can be kind of an analgesic against loss, against suffering, against pain. Is that what you kind of experienced? And when you realized that, let me ask you a real quick. Why the fuck would you give that up? Why just sit there and say, well, gee, it makes me feel better, and as you're suffering through what would drive most people, you got to be aware, most people in your situation would probably have been driven further into religion. So yours, I don't think is necessarily so why did it pull you out? And then I do want to get into the black culture, because I think that was an interesting one too, but let's ask this one first.
I mean, there's even Oz can tell you, like, there be many a times where we reference and say, atheists are not short of, wishing that a God was real. They're not short of that. I know I'm not. It's just, and there have been many a times where I would think, even just within the last maybe few months, that I would think, I wish a God was real in this situation, and I wish I could feel more at ease about what I'm going through. Because who wants to go through trauma? Who wants to suffer through a depressive state or just a manic state, anything that could cause you to feel just at your lowest? Like, no one does. And what the bliss of just praying about it and letting it go and giving it to God and things like that, that just seems so peaceful and convenient and serene. Obviously, it would be easy for someone to turn back. There were several moments during my deconstruction where I felt like I will just turn back, or just in the moment pretend that I'm okay with this, just to feel like I can pretend, like, fake it until you make it, basically.
Yep. Exactly.
I will pretend to move along with this thing until I really feel this thing. Like, I'm going to have to feel it at some point, right? I could.
Yeah.
Presently, I still haven't. But I know as recent as, like, because I did have a stepdad. My mother had been married to him about 4.5 years, and he unfortunately passed away in April. Oh. And so and I talked many a time with Oz about this, and shared, of course, on the channel too, that, the difference of losing my biological dad when I was a believer and losing my stepdad as an atheist is a stark difference. I'm grateful that I have the supportive community and the love of my life, with me, and to have these conversations and to help me through my grieving, because how I grieved during the loss with my stepdad early this year, I could not share with my mom and my sister, because obviously they are believers. They trust in the Lord to see them through and gather their strength and make them whole, so we can, do our final, goodness for that individual and bury them and let that be that, and let the strength of God to continue to bless them and all yada, yada, yada. I don't share in that. I did not share in that. Yeah. I couldn't. But even still, it was because I won't go into super detail, because I didn't actively see my dad pass away. It was sudden. And I had to be coached back home. I was in college, so I had to be coached back home pretty much the next day after he passed, without me having knowledge that he was already passed. But yeah, once I came home, I was told. But I myself, my sister and my mother, my stepdad was in ICU. He only been there maybe 3 days, and I actively watched him have his last breath. And I say have because he was hooked up to a machine to, he was intubated. Gosh, I can't even. I'm a nurse and I can't even. Thank you.
I was going to say, I shouldn't be correcting you here. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Wow. Intubated. Come on. Yeah. Get it together, Jenna. Apologies. Yes, he was intubated. It was pretty much hooked up to a machine. Oh, that's nice. My little spotlight ran out.
Titan, that was not me. I didn't touch anything. I swear to God, that was not on my end.
Damn it, Nick.
Oh, son of a bitch.
I appreciate the little comedy relief in between this.
Thank you all for. Oh no, that wasn't comedy. No, that wasn't comedy relief in the interlude. That was the end. Thank you all for coming. I think we're done now. I've had about as much as. You know what? This is. Oh God.
And a fucking boring show anyway. No, it's kidding.
No, that is not true.
Definitely not true. No.
So
as I was, yes, he was intubated. It was helping him breathe. So he was pretty much in a coma, and watching him take his last breath, and the doctor checking and analyzing that he was indeed gone. Actively seeing that would also potentially move someone to fall back to faith, and it wasn't but short of maybe within that hour of my sister, myself, and my mom leaving the ICU room to go outside of the hospital to get a breather. And natural to us, because we've been to many funerals and have buried many family members, we just get a jump on, all right, let's get, preparation started. And, in that moment, I remember, I think I either called or texted Oz and told him. And, as a loving partner that he is, he comforted me, and I was in communication with him pretty much all through that day. And I told him in that moment that I do wish God was real, because, seeing my mother having to pray over him, hoping that there was a turnaround, hoping he'd get out of this. Because many they've been in dire straits where they've been in ICU, coded. Oz, for example, and he lovingly shares that story of him being hit by a dump truck, coming out as Iron Man at the end.
I do. Oz is probably one of the few guests. It's like I should have done more background on him. We had him on the show, and I didn't ask him about the time he coded because I didn't know. But it would have come up if I had known. Just like, yeah. Oh, so you've been dead before? Okay. Twice. Good to twice. Yeah, I was gonna say more than once. That's an elephant in the room. You'd think if the host knew about it, but it's like okay.
Yeah, well, you get what you get. But those moments where people have come back from that much worse, and he didn't, unfortunately. And you. Yes, I apologize if you hear the ding. I fucking have the alarm bell system next to me behind my bed, which I can't fucking turn off, so I apologize. I try to mute when I'm not talking, so sorry.
Also not me. I just want to make this crystal clear.
I hate it. I know it's irritating me. It irritates me. But yes, to close it there. Yeah, I grieved differently, and it was still a bit. Oh my gosh, Nick, why do you keep doing this to me?
Oh my God,
Honestly,
you're
I don't even know
stoned.
why this keeps happening.
Oh, okay. All right. Hold on a sec.
This is
All
a
right.
very
So no, I'm going to
interactive
close. I'm going to
show.
close the. I'm going to close the shield. She won't be able to talk anymore. So hold on. We're going to get this son of a bitch.
Oh, wrong one.
No, I think that. Okay. Hold on. Wait. How do I?
Uh-oh.
Give me a sec. Okay, I may not touch anything.
Yep.
Okay, I'm not going to touch
go.
anything.
Cool.
Okay, well, no, I am. We'll close that, and it's a Xandring. You know what? Okay. And she's muted? No, I can hear her. I think that okay. All right. Well, so yeah. I was going to offer you. Listen, in case Tang needs a producer, I can send you ours.
Oh. Okay.
Sure. Okay.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Our show
I
was
really
running
don't know
too
why you
smoothly
keep
as it
turning
was.
off like that. Anyways, oh wow. You know what? It's okay. Shit happens. We're professionals.
Yep. Exactly. Well, one of us is.
But yeah, I'll end it there.
All
Maybe it's just telling me to shut the fuck up. There you go.
All right, let's see. So, yeah, no, there's so many places I want to go with this. I want to talk about two things, and I figure we'll go wherever you want to go with it. The first is, okay. I want to talk about sort of communities and support structures. So, even people who like, okay, I'm actually a bit of a misanthrope, but, it's like I still need to have friends and I still need to talk to people and, I still need a support system. Very, very few people. There are people, psychopaths and sociopaths most usually, but there are people who don't really actually need that. But for the most part, we can say it's true of the human condition that we need that. So for you, first of all, it dovetails interestingly for you because that is there does seem to be in the U.S. part of the Black cultural experience in the United States is church, and it seems to be almost ubiquitous. So if you're becoming an atheist, yeah, it's not only now your family, but essentially it seems to me a part of your cultural identity being lost and suddenly being outcast from that. So the death of your father, I assume that your parents were not pleased at your deconversion. So how did that affect your mental health? And B, how did you cope with that?
Well, still coping, I guess you could say. It's been rough, especially I feel like every time I have a experience, it's always compounded with another experience, even though it's good. The other experience is that I'll be moving from California and around middle of January, I'll be moving to Indiana to live with my partner. So, Indiana, that's the exciting part.
Which is not Texas.
Indiana.
And even I
Not
know that.
Texas.
And I just claims to the contrary are just
Indiana.
like, we have some bad, okay, thank you. I get it. Thank you. We have some trolls on this channel. We were hijacked earlier, but we are good. So
We're good. We're solid.
Right. Yeah.
Yes. So in January, I'll be moving to Texas, Indiana. And so that's the exciting part of it all. Having that transition, discovering myself, especially when I went to the Better Conference in June, it was my first time being there and seeing the way of life and the lifestyles of others and just everything, just how the quality felt different and how much more at peace I felt being in an environment where I didn't feel like I was surrounded by Jesus things, even though the city is known to be the city of churches. But
I was going to say, is this the same Fort Wayne we're talking about?
The irony, yes. But of course, being that we were there for a for a conference, of course, you're surrounded by more of your atheist friends, including you. And so that process right now, moving through that transition is, both Oz and I are thrilled. But of course, coming out as a non-believer was the hard-hitting part. And of course, my mother and my sister did not take that well. To the point where I know because my mother told me straightforward that she is utterly embarrassed that I don't believe, and I should feel embarrassed. And how dare I, confess or even say that, because in her words, I would never utter something like that. And she dared me to, and this is a classic maneuver of hers since my father died, a method of getting to hit my emotions harder is to reference my dad. Like, would you, if your dad was alive right now, would you dare even say that to his face? And, I could not but well up in tears at that point. That's when I started to feel tearful. Besides them struggling to understand, and I'm struggling to understand why this keeps turning off, but it's going to happen. Struggling to understand why and when I felt that way, what made me upset and turn away from God, what happened to me, something that has to happen. I didn't dare, even though I had a pinpoint reason, even though I kind of questioned slightly before my dad, but I wasn't going to even say that because I knew they would use that against me. So I was smart in that situation.
Yeah. But
even still, it's within that nature of, you, how could you not believe? With all that, everything God has blessed you with all you have done, He has done for you, and how you have been successful in work and make all this money and la da da da. And I'm like, I really don't make all that much money. I mean, it looks like a lot, but fucking living in California is not a lot.
No.
But it was so, that day was embarrassing because we were in public. We were out for brunch. So that was lovely. And, us coming out of the restaurant, her yelling at me in front of all these people walking by, and yelling at me in a sense of professing and letting it be known that she was a believer in Christ, and letting that be known that how dare I not be, in a very loud, much louder voice than I'm doing. I just don't want to be super loud. Just to embarrass me and to make me feel ashamed of myself and demean me. And obviously from hurt too. But I mean, I do feel that I was the most hurt out of all that, because, you don't have to publicly shame someone that way, but whatever. I can't tell people how to react to things or how they feel. It's only through my own responses. But anyway, it's since then, that was about a month, slightly over a month ago, that I confessed. So I'm no longer closeted. If you don't know, I am an open atheist now. I know that's been a thing, a process for me over the years, being public virtually. So there you go. And coping and dealing with that, it has been difficult. More so, if, religious talk wasn't always very frequent, it's more frequent now. I remember the first time actually them praying over dinner, with them knowing that I'm an atheist, felt very awkward. But I still, respected them and held their hand while they did their thing. And I just, look around like I usually do. Yeah, it's, and on top of the fact that, me moving to a whole other place with a man they do not know of, unmarried, and just, in their words, shacking up to live a sinful life or whatnot, is utterly despisable, and they're too embarrassed to even mention that to anyone. And frankly, I'm glad, because I don't want to hear other mouths about it. Yeah. I really don't. I'm trying to do my job. Favors. really just trying to do my time and get the fuck out. But at the same time, it does hurt, and I have been suffering a lot. And every other day, it's maybe something that triggers me. But recently, 2 days ago, that I spent a lot of time with. Well, not that I don't spend a lot of time with Oz on the phone, but even more time with him because he's helping me through this process in which he had to go through alone. And I know and appreciate his love and support for helping me through that. And of course, once I came out, all of my friends that I know of, including you, that have been supportive and helped me through. So, yeah. I'm going to just talk up a storm. I can say so much, but I know just to transition the conversation to more focus on like Black families and Black communities, I understand why there's so many that are still unspoken or out as atheists because of those very things. And they are very, very real and painful. And many don't even have the physical capability of getting away from that. I luckily have that opportunity. I wish it was sooner. I wish it was yesterday. But I'm getting there, and I gratefully have that, but not many do. And not too long do they find themselves reverting back into the faith because it's just safer.
Well, and it's been my experience that and you had mentioned this before, and it's certainly been my observation. I think I've seen a few studies, but it's been a while, that church is, in fact, and it often cited is, okay, so we spoke earlier about religion being, I don't want to use the word crutch, but definitely filling a psychological need that exists for one reason or another. And it can exist for any number of reasons. And some of them are something stemming from an addictive personality, and some are just ways of coping with profound loss, because the reality is, and we don't, in this country, I don't know why, but we really do have this "you should suck it up" attitude, and this idea that, really all it takes is sucking it. Yeah, just pull yourself up from your bootstraps and do all that other shit. And that we know now, and have known actually for quite some time, that is not true. We have defense mechanisms, we have coping mechanisms, and the reality, the reason that those exist is because we do have a finite amount of pressure that we can handle before, cracking. And defense mechanisms help us extend that when things get really, really difficult, which they do. So, religion does many things, but one of them is it fills that area reasonably nicely, and is a relief for stress on several different levels. So, having said that, there is a common sort of theory that obviously to be Black in America is to suffer a great deal more stress than you otherwise would, than certainly the white experience in America, and that's one reason why Black communities have a tendency to focus so much more on religion, is that is one of their coping mechanisms. Yep. Has that been your experience? And then what is it now? I mean, as an atheist, when I tell people I'm an atheist, the biggest thing that I've noticed is theists tend to be threatened by that. They are genuinely threatened by that. I have to believe in Black communities in the U.S., they'd be even more threatened by it because it's such a rare thing, especially for a Black person. Has that been your experience, and how have you coped with that?
And that's interesting. I find that I am the least threatening. And it could be because it's my overall personality, if they happen to know and see me and heard me, because I'm not like my babe. I'm not like Oz. I'm not as in your face, but I can get very upset if, very provoked, but it's very rare. But what I have commonly been met with is maybe a bit more scrutiny and, a bit more misogyny, obviously, as a woman, and not given the same kind of acknowledgement, because I may appear and look a certain way on top of me being a Black woman. And, obviously maybe my understanding of philosophy and all that stuff is not as palpable as many others. And it's not because I don't give a damn. But, that
well, it's nice somebody over there on Tang cares about philosophy. But anyways, please continue.
Right? I mean, Oz certainly does. So,
I didn't just say that. So, yeah. Anyways, please continue.
Yeah. So he's gonna. Oh God, you're so.
I know. I am racking him. I'm racking him up. So this is what I do, right? So one of my ways of dealing with stress is to just poke the lion, and then the problem though is I'll keep poking the lion, and then if I'm behind this glass wall that I know is going to vanish, I'm like, yeah, but it's there right now, so I'm going to really start poking, and I'll deal with the consequences later. I was like, ooh, how much longer? Listen, so this show is going to last about another 45, 50 hours, because that's how long I'd like to just like, sorry. I was like, yeah. Mm-hmm. All right. I'm sorry. In these communities, okay. So, your interest in philosophy was a key takeaway that I got from what you were just saying, but please continue.
Sure. My lack of interest in philosophy, I'm basically overall, especially in the beginning, not treated, with the general overall respect. I mean, I don't expect that from anyone. I genuinely believe you earn that. But it was very palpable how people would react to you, especially if you start to speak up and have a voice. The pushback was quite interesting. It's more misogynistic and what have you. But I feel that I have a tough enough skin, I guess you could say, to just be like, well, fuck it, I don't care. And I'm not an in-your-face person, so it's not like I just go out looking for that shit or just get in people's faces. Like I just whatever. But overall, I think you don't really. Obviously, there's not really a lot of us. The most well-known of us is Mandisa Thomas. Love her to death. As far as Black atheist women, and of course, 𝗎𝗍𝐿 Hutchinson, and another one I can't recall right now off the top of my head. But really, that's it. And obviously, Cynthia McDonald does her own thing. Love you, by the way. But that's all I can really think of and name as far as Black atheist women. And the rarity of that obviously takes a long time for a person such as myself to find those spaces where you can feel your most comfortable, because representation is very important, obviously, in any arena. So finding that helps. But of course, you certainly don't, or you certainly are not lended the same respect or the same ear or courtesy as someone like you, white man, straight, or whatever have you. Well, assuming I'm a white straight male would have. And it's so interesting because you never want to believe that is the case, especially in a non-religious community where you think everyone's just all open and everything, but it still holds some of that hierarchy or patriarchy there, I should say. But besides that, I think over the last few years, just being more online and doing content and being on shows and various other things, you earn that space and you earn that kind of time to talk and speak and learn and, develop relationships with certain individuals. I think that just comes over time. But in general, a lot of voices that look like myself are left unheard because it's like, you're just not afforded that. You don't have that privilege, I should say.
Yeah. I think another way it's earned, and this is an unfortunate truth of reality, but in general, another way it's earned is by suffering. And the suffering is to use an overused metaphor, like a crucible, and by the time it's done, then you've earned a perspective on life that people who haven't suffered don't have. And I mean, it's not to say it's worth it, but I am a glass is half empty kind of guy. Always have been. Didn't really realize I was, or what that even meant until, maybe in the last 5 years. And I've become very aware of the fact that it's just, I think intellectuals have a tendency to think it's dishonest to look at things positively. They're like, if it's either half empty or half full, look at it half empty because you want it to be half full. And, you can't look at the data the way you want it.
It's almost like saying you expect the worst possible scenario all the time.
Yeah, well, I do, and that has a measured and noticeable impact on mood and behavior. It is much more healthy to be glasses half full in terms of looking at things. So, sure. I try as an exercise to realize the benefits, and as the benefits of anything negative, and there usually are. And the benefits of suffering is usually wisdom that can't be earned any other way. And it's a bitch of a way to earn it. It's not to say it's even necessarily worth it, but you do get it. And it puts you, and you in particular, I think, in a position that to do good in ways other people can't. But it sucks. So
yeah, it does suck, and I'm not perfect. I try, in the interim of dealing with whatever I personally deal with, I want to and kick myself, and sometimes either punish or talk bad or down on myself, because I strive to want to be a better friend to people I've come to grow and love genuinely, and people I haven't met yet. So. In that in all of that, it's hard balancing that sometimes, especially for me, I've been diagnosed with depression and mood disorder, with mood swings and things like that. But I'm still untreated. I've never been medicated. I've been in and out of therapists at least 6 times, seen a psychiatrist once. But a lot of that I've just now come to realize, and this kind of stems from me talking to Oz earlier, just leading up to the show, that, the initial trauma started when I was forced. And obviously you should never force someone to go into therapy or seek help when they're not ready. It will never, ever, ever be productive. Yep. And I'm full example of that already. And it took me quite a few years to even take myself to that point to see therapy. And I've since then have seen 6 and 1 psychiatrist. Presently right now, I'm without a therapist. And like I said, I've never been treated with my depression or anything like that. But it's not that I don't want to. And it's not that I may or may not have the means to. I've essentially narrowed my focus to believe that because I always take the less, in medical terms, you say the less invasive procedure or approach, meaning start with a change in lifestyle, then let's try this low dose medication, then let's transfer to something higher, then let's do this biopsy procedure, then let's go to surgery. That's the last result. Yeah. So my last result, or my least, my thinking now, as far as the lesser of the invasive measures, is to remove, or even though it seems like a huge thing, is to strive to remove myself from the present situation that's keeping me anxious, because every other day I have fluctuating levels of anxiety, even more so since coming out, and my family interacting with me, even though most days cordial, it's still not great. So I feel that removing myself from the present situation to once I move to Indiana would help relieve some of that, you think? And then, of course, I want to seek that professional help again and get, solid with a therapist or someone that could further understand or help me, because I want to be a healthy me. So that's important. Overall, I think that would be healthy for anyone to take that approach first. If you are able to, remove yourself from a situation that is causing you to not deal or cope healthily with what you're dealing with, strive to remove yourself from that. And if that does not work, then you move on to the next, or try something else, or consult a friend, or if you're able to, because that's important for you. But you have to want that, and I know I do. But I think the tendency. Oh, I'm sorry. What you were saying?
Oh, no, please wrap it up and then wrap up what you were going to say. And then I was going to say something and got a super chat.
Okay. Oh, sure. No, you can do your super chat first.
And then I was going to say, I was going to give you maybe a little bit of my background, because I had an observation that I was going to make as well, but I figured it might help with some of my background. Mark Reed, $5. Mark, thank you so much for your support, and thank you. It's good to see you, by the way. Thank you for coming, and congratulations on you hitting a milestone. I was watching your stream for that, and you had noted that it was a small milestone by many measures, but that you were trying to grow your channel and just set realistic bar, and I think you're doing it great, and it was fun to watch. So thank you for coming by, and good to see you. $5 Australian. The optimist says the glass is half full. The pessimist says the glass is half empty. The engineer says the glass is twice as big as it needs to be. All of those are true. I will add to you what the scientist says. The scientist says the glass is completely full. One half of it is water. The other half is filled with air. So thanks for just derailing everything. Now we're talking about the ontology of a glass, which is actually one of my favorite topics, to be quite honest. But thank you very much for the super chat. Here we are.
Oh boy,
just discussing what exactly is a glass and what do you mean by full. Thank you, Mark. No, I don't know. There's so much to unpack, and I don't want to completely derail and go off into all sorts of other things. So I was diagnosed bipolar type 2, treatment resistant. One of early years in college, and that's had its challenges, and it's gotten worse as I get older, which is scary, because it's sort of like, it's not always under control, and it is treatment resistant, and it's not easy to treat. And I've got a family, so whenever I start having issues, especially, it's so difficult to treat. Most of the treatments aren't covered by insurance. Certainly the doctors that are capable of treating it aren't covered by insurance. So every time I have to shell out $350 an hour to talk to somebody who is an expert. Yeah, I sit there and think, okay, if it wasn't for me going through this, would be putting that money towards the girls going to college or doing something like that. I'm really keenly aware of it. No, we are not doing sandwich epistemology. I'd ban him for that, but I can't. I banned Titan repeatedly, and then he comes back with the wrench the next day. I think he works for YouTube. I think he's like, I don't know. He could be Elon Musk for all
magic. I know. I don't know.
Yeah. Let's see. Dear Lord, I kind of forget there was a reason I was going to discuss how that sort of dovetailed to my own experience. I do know. So. And it's funny, because to me, this is just life. So it never crossed my mind that it had an impact on me. I was just like, oh, no, I processed it. My mother was a difficult human being, to say the least. She did not want children at all. She really didn't want children. But my father was leaving, and she figured if she had a child, he'd stay. When it looked like the first child wasn't keeping him, she had another. But she told us and made it crystal clear that we had one goal in life, or one reason for living, and that was to keep him, and he eventually left, and so we failed at that. And so at the age of between 4 and 7, it's sort of like, well, your whole purpose for existence is done.
Wow.
It had an impact. So as you can imagine. So the thing is, human beings are very relativistic creatures. We have zero sense of who. I shouldn't say, okay, no, let me rephrase that. We have a very hard time getting any independent sense of who or what we are. A slave owner who teaches his slaves to read, who takes care of his slaves, who gives his slaves health care and proper food and all this other stuff, is a saint 200 years ago and is a monster today. That same person, pick up that person, drop them in alive today, saying, oh, I'm going to treat my slaves great. It's like, okay, absolute monster.
Yeah.
And it's the same person doing the same thing. So how do you know? And I'm not trying to be a moral relativist, because that goes into all sorts of other difficulties. But we know who we are very much by the feedback we get from the society around us. And since you're now an atheist, and people have got to say to you all the time, like, well, how are you moral as an atheist? Well, we as a species developed morality. It's built into us. We wouldn't be the dominant species on the planet. But the way we get that feedback is from those around us. So when your mother says to you how disappointing you are, and when you get kicked out of your social groups for whatever reason, and we have a tendency to think, well, you can just sort of suck that up and you can just be strong about it, and then we're hard on ourselves when we let it affect us. But you can't do other. You can't, because you are not wired that way. The human race is not wired that way. We would not function if we didn't seek feedback, and especially positive feedback from others in our community. So, it seems to me. True. So one of the ways I deal with it, I don't know if this is helpful or not, but I was just thinking about it because we're talking about your mother. I try to identify how and why. And it sounds like you almost said it, so it may be that you thought about this, but anger is a much easier emotion to cope with. I mean, much easier than grief. And I think it's easier for your mom to be angry with you than to deal with. That doesn't mean she's not doing it. And people would sit there and tell me, well, your mother's this way for X, Y, and Z reasons. Like, yeah, she's still this way. I don't talk to her. I cut her out of my life at 21. There's a reason for that. That she has decent reasons for how and why she is the way she is doesn't change the fact that she's an unpleasant human being, and I don't want anything to do with her. So this isn't to say that it ends it, but it sounds like, I guess what I was trying to say was, I think I understand her reaction. It's the wrong one. It's absolutely the wrong one.
Indeed, I agree.
But I do get it, and it's not a reflection of you. And I think intellectually you may know that. Probably doesn't hurt to hear it from someone else.
No, it doesn't, and I appreciate that. I do, and when I'm not. I mean, we're all irrational creatures, but when I'm not extremely irrational, or I'm not in a state where I'm high anxiety and I just feel hopeless and helpless and just triggered and upset. Obviously, my mind goes, I'm a terrible person. There's nothing good about me, and all this other stuff. Sure, yes, but in my present mind now, where I'm a bit more rational than normal, I know the person that I am. Finally, I know me finally. And I say that because even after deconverting officially and acknowledging that I am an atheist, it took me a few years thereafter to understand who I was as a person. Because again, the wrapped identity with my with being Black and the culture surrounding it, and being used to being a Christian, was still tied. So, okay, who am I now? Am I still considered Black? Sounds weird to say, but there's a whole lot that goes with that. Obviously, physically, I appear as an African American woman, sure, but what does that mean? Does that afford me more or less than before? Am I considered less reliable or trustworthy of a person because I lack faith? I certainly never felt that I did, but of course you question that. Yep. Where does that put me in the world? Should I be open? Should I not? Because again, even though it's not as bad as it was back then, there's still, those discrimination and racism, and it's not like I have been short of that. So finding that all out and then figuring out what makes me happy, what satisfies me. Sexuality is a big one that many people start to question too, or try to understand, even coming out of faith, especially if they felt that they were homosexual. Feeling what desires or things that make me happy. Do I feel safe in the space that I'm in? Do I need something different or new? All of that stuff. But last year, did I figure out or understand the person that I was, and saying that I am a good person. I am not this ugly words that my mother would call me when she was really angry at me, like a whore, or the leader of a brothel, or a secret bomb maker on the internet, or
wow.
I had
heard the other ones. I hadn't heard that one before.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And there's a story with that one, but I won't go into it. It was just interesting that she would say that, and many other things. But I'm not those things, and I know I'm not those things. I know I am a good person, and I strive to be a good daughter and sister. I try, and I feel that I'm more open and honest now that I am out with them than I ever have been, because knowing that they did not have that knowledge, it ate at me. It really did, because I did not like lying to them or not letting them be aware of why I was becoming more and more despondent over the years, because I was. And I figure that's natural for somebody. But it was weighing on me a lot. And I, like Oz would tell me many a time before, you're going to come to a breaking point, babe. And I did. And especially since I knew I wanted a different life, and I knew it's not that I wanted a different life. I wanted my life. I have been living a life through what they wanted, and I have been unhappy for a really long time. And I'm sure that's many people's stories, especially if they struggle with mental health and not understanding how impactful that is when they finally figure out what's wrong with them. Like, it's an amazing feeling. Even if there isn't a treatment, I've heard this many from patients I've worked with. Like, they've been dealing with an ailment for X amount of years, no name attached to it, doctors in and out, trying to figure it out. Finally, someone figures it out, and you have a name to it, and it's like, wow, it's a weight off your shoulders. Like, I know what I have. Yay! Then you can finally move forward, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Same thing. Just finally figuring out me. Now I can move forward. What's my next steps? And just naturally at the interim of, falling in love and building a community, being more about content, it was just like, this is me. And I don't feel safe doing it here. And when you discover those things for yourself, it's a beautiful journey and transition, because like many what people will say, it's so much more beautiful on the other side of it. And I see that. I do. But at the same time, it's fucking hard. None of this is easy. It's not easy now. And I would never lie to someone and say, oh, you come out, you're good. No, you're not. It's so fucking hard. Even now.
Yeah. I do think, and we'll probably wrap this up, but I do think that's where atheists in general, in the atheist community, especially the anti-theist community, seems to. Hitchens had famously said, like, I've met atheists who say they miss their faith like a missing limb, and I don't understand that at all. And every atheist who wanted to be like Hitchens decided, like, oh yeah, deconversion's easy, you get through.
Yeah.
In general, it seems to me that when you lie about stuff like that, it usually comes back to bite you in the ass. And one way it's biting us in the ass is the argument that, atheists just hate God. It's like the number of atheists that I know that really wish God were true is probably at least 40% of the atheists I know. And a lot of them won't say it because then other atheists will come on and go, why on earth would you say that? It's like, why wouldn't you?
Yeah. And we're real against each other. Come on. Yeah. If there was one thing I knew, if there was one thing I could say that was wrong about Hitchens, it was that.
Yeah, and it's sad to see people who I love Hitchens. The two people I have a picture of is Martin Luther King Jr. and Hitchens, and which is an odd combination, I'll admit, but that's for another day. Speaking of mental health disorders, at any rate, But it's sort of like, you know what, I really loved the guy. I think a lot of people do, but you also have to be able to disagree with your heroes, and you have to be able to not, try to walk the steps. You don't try to walk in their footsteps, you seek what they sought. And that's what they'd be most impressed with, too, is not people who follow them, but people who say, okay, where were you aiming for and how do I get there? So, anyways, it's a whole nother set of complaints for a whole nother set of times. Thank you so much for coming on. I hope you'll come back. I mean, I know we did that voodoo with your light and, some bad mojo there.
This has never happened. I am cursed. I am never coming back. No, I'm kidding. I got to figure out why. I'm in California. All last week was like over 100 degrees. So there's like fluctuations in power and shit like that all over California. So that may be one thing, because that shit never happens. But no, I enjoyed this. I'm welcome, because what we do on Tay, we always talk about mental health. That is a number one serious thing. Everyone knows Oz's story. That is something that is important to us, to me. We strive to really be there for people as much as we can. And, we're human too. We're imperfect. Sometimes we fall short. I know Oz is not great on getting back to people in DMs. Sometimes I take a few days to myself.
Yes,
but you never.
Sometimes I don't know anybody this has happened to who has maybe sent Oz a DM and then like 30 or even 60 days later, it's like, oh, sorry, I'm just getting back to this. What the fuck is this? Did my DM on like Messenger, did it get to you by camel? What the fuck is going on? Somebody had to print it out and then just put it on a camel and send it to Fort Wayne, Indiana. But I don't know. Oh, God.
I know I called you out, babe. I apologize. But all in fun. He knows he knows it's right. But we're human too, and we try our best, but we never forget people. I know that much. I don't. Once I have it in my mind, it does stay there until I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get to that. I promise I'm gonna get there. But mental health is important, and it should be. It's so sad to keep saying this even at this day and age, but it should be normalized, and it should be talked about, and it should not be demonized. And you are not filled with demons. Shut the fuck up, Greg Locke. You are you. Everyone is different. Everyone has their struggles and trauma. That does not make you a horrible person. And it's good to feel and realize that for yourself.
Well,
but I'd love to talk about everything else if I come back.
A lot of every YouTube channel is a work in progress, that I can tell. In Time certainly is, but Tang is one of those that is very honest about the fact that they are a work in progress. And you guys always come up and you say, okay, we're just going to sort this shit out, and we're going to be okay with bad hot takes, and we're going to be okay talking about this. And everybody there, you, Oz, everybody's encouraged to be honest and just to try to find ways to blindly go through what it is they're going through together. And so I've always been a big fan of Tang. The link for Tang is in the description, as is the Twitter for Jena. So I hope you guys will follow them. I hope you will check them out. So I love, every now and then I'll come by and I'll see them, and if they're streaming, I was just like, ooh, I'm gonna hop in the chat, or sorry, I'll hop into the show. I get to hop into the show and hang with Oz, and
several times in the last few weeks you do that, and it's like, oh, there's Nick.
Yep. So it's always yeah, and then Oz and I will fight over mythicism, and Oz will pretend he won.
Or you're not coming on with the suit jacket.
Yeah, if I don't have the jacket, he's just like, Nick, where's the coat? I was like, oh fuck, I gotta turn off the camera and put the coat on.
We pay you to do this. I don't know why this is so hard.
I'm sorry. I don't take good instructions. I'll get better about it. So, well, technically now Oz auctioned off my coat and it got 50 cents. This is not a joke. He auctioned my coat off at the beginning of the better. So I'm there. It's like, oh, Nick, come on up on stage. I was like, oh, okay. I'm coming up on stage. I come up, and he's like, okay, we're gonna auction off his coat. $400. This is $400. Fans of the show know $400. We got 50 cents for it. I was like, oh yeah, let me just go. I'll get you a receipt, and you can have my $400 coat for 50 cents. Thanks, Oz.
Deal.
Yeah,
it was a good deal.
Not for me.
It could have went more, but no one went for it. So
yeah,
it was
so on top of losing a $400 coat for 50 cents, on top of that injury, I get the insult of the fact nobody else wanted the thing. So please go to Tang. I can't endorse it enough. No, seriously, all joking aside, they're good people. Jena's good people. Oz is good people. You guys have seen Oz before. He's been on the show. Would love to have him back. Love to have you back. Thank you very much. This is not an easy topic, so thank you for coming on and discussing it with us. Yeah. And thank you, and I look forward to chatting with you soon. My pleasure. All right, folks, we are going to have, tomorrow night, we're going to have Commander McMillan is going to be on. The war in Ukraine has had some radical changes. He has some predictions on what we're going to be seeing there over the next few months, and I think we're going to be looking at some pretty big stuff. So tomorrow night, I think we're talking about revolution in Russia. That's actually what I think we're talking about, and there's some signs of it.
Boy.
Yeah. So it's the Swan Lake. We'll talk about that tomorrow. Hope you guys will join us, and we look forward to seeing.
So Oz says he is now going to review the Pat debate tonight, and you have to appear. You are demanded to be in attendance.
I have been requested for, anytime Oz wants me on Tang, I will be there if I am free. And
you must bring the $999 suit jacket.
For fuck's sake.
I added that in there. I'm going to fix my...
Oh, you added that in. Okay, that's what I get for not looking at the live chat. Obviously, I don't know what happened. Obviously, our mods are not dealing with the trolls in the live chat. I'm just saying... Titan. Okay. All right. I see how I have about as much control over my own channel as the average person on the street. All right. Thank you all for coming. Jena, it was a genuine pleasure. Thank you so much.
Very much enjoyed this. Thank you so much.
Night all.